Sometimes, the most shocking answers don't come from the living, but from those who have already crossed over. Dolores Cannon, a hypnotherapist who spent decades exploring memories accessed under deep regression, documented hundreds of such accounts from people around the world. These were not ordinary dreams or fantasies, but recurring recollections consistently reported under deep hypnosis. And among all those sessions, one specific moment kept repeating. Regardless of age, culture, religion, or belief system, people described a shared experience that occurs right after the end. In this video, we'll explore that mysterious phenomenon. What happens in the first moments after death? Why is it rarely discussed? And how can a single question change everything? On this channel, we don't tell you what to believe. We simply present what was recorded so that you can decide for yourself. According to the documented sessions led by Dolores Cannon, what happens in the moments right after death is nothing like what most of us fear. The transition is not chaotic. There's no darkness, no confusion, no cries of terror. In fact, the overwhelming experience described by countless individuals under deep regressive hypnosis is one of peace, lightness, and a profound sense of release. It begins, almost universally, with the feeling of separating from the physical body. Not violently, but gently, as if floating upward or backward, weightless and free. In these sessions, many recalled being able to see their lifeless body from above. There was no fear, only observation. Some described a sensation of relief, as if a great burden had been lifted. Others noted a subtle awareness that something significant had just happened, a shift in energy, a moment of recognition that they were no longer in the physical world. But here's what stands out. Fear was rarely mentioned. More often, subjects described a strange familiarity, a sense that this transition was somehow known to them. Often, what followed was a sense of movement, being drawn toward a light or through a tunnel-like space. This description, repeated again and again in Cannon's work, mirrors countless accounts of near-death experiences documented outside the realm of hypnosis. The movement wasn't forced. It felt natural, guided. Souls described it as being drawn home, not to an unknown void, but to a place they recognized deeply. Not visually, but emotionally. A space of belonging. And then came the moment that many of them said marked the true turning point. Being met. Some encountered beings of light, deceased loved ones, or familiar energies. Each encounter was unique, but often deeply comforting. These figures didn't speak in words, but were understood instantly, through a kind of telepathic clarity. The presence was loving, patient, and deeply familiar. For some, it was as if a beloved family member had simply come to greet them after a long journey. For others, it was more abstract, a wave of consciousness that welcomed them with indescribable compassion. What's crucial to understand is that none of these experiences were shaped by religious expectations. In fact, many of the subjects had no particular spiritual background or belief system. Yet they described similar landscapes, radiant fields, vast skies, and all-encompassing light. Some didn't see anything physical at all, just felt enveloped in a space of pure awareness where time did not exist. But in all of these accounts, the emotional tone was the same: peace, acceptance, and the unmistakable sense of having returned to something that had always been there. In this place, whatever form it took, something extraordinary occurred. Not an external judgment, not a grand revelation, but an internal realization. The soul, now freed from earthly distraction, asked itself a question, not out of guilt or pressure, but from within. A quiet, profound inquiry. Did I do what I came to do? That was the first thought for many. Not where am I, or am I dead, but an immediate and intimate reflection on the purpose of the life just completed. This moment of inner assessment appeared again and again in Cannon's transcripts. It wasn't framed as judgment. There was no list of sins or punishments. It was more like a pause, a soul checking in with itself. Some responded with joy, a sense of peace in knowing they had fulfilled their intention. Others simply said, "I'll try again." There was no fear in this answer, only a calm acceptance that learning would continue. This wasn't failure, it was growth. So what does the soul feel immediately after death? According to dozens of accounts collected over years of work, it feels release, recognition, and clarity. It realizes that it is more than the life it just lived, that it has existed before and will continue to exist. The separation from the body is not an end, but a return. And in that return, the soul meets itself more fully than it ever could on earth. In the thousands of regression sessions Dolores Cannon conducted, a remarkable pattern began to emerge, one that transcended cultural, religious, and personal differences. When subjects recalled the moment of their physical death and the transition that followed, they did not express fear, panic, or confusion. Instead, many spoke of a moment of profound introspection. The question that arose wasn't "Where am I?" or "What is happening to me?" It was quieter, more essential. Did I do what I came here to do? According to Cannon's findings, this question is not driven by fear or guilt, but by awareness. Rather, it reflects the soul's deep desire for purpose and alignment with its chosen path. Before incarnation, souls are said to participate in selecting their life circumstances, choosing relationships, challenges, and opportunities for growth. So when life ends, the soul instinctively seeks to understand whether it honored that mission. Cannon repeatedly emphasized that there is no judgment in the afterlife, no condemnation or punishment, only reflection, learning, and understanding. Those who felt they had completed their soul's objectives often described a feeling of peace, completion, and even celebration. They spoke of being welcomed warmly, of light and joy, and of a kind of homecoming. Some mentioned a review process, an immersive emotional reliving of certain life events, not from the perspective of the self, but from the view of others affected by their actions. It was not about reward or punishment, but about growth. For these souls, the inner question, "Did I fulfill my purpose?" was met with a quiet, affirmative sense of peace. In contrast, there were souls who, upon asking themselves that same question, felt they had strayed from their path. This realization was not met with fear or condemnation. Instead, these souls expressed an eager desire to return, to try again, to learn what had not yet been learned. Some expressed that they had been distracted by material pursuits or had allowed fear or pain to prevent them from expressing their true selves. Cannon documented numerous cases where souls expressed regret, not in a self-punishing way, but in a sincere wish for deeper experience and greater emotional clarity in a future life. One particularly striking case described a man who, under regression, recalled dying in a previous life without ever having pursued his true passion. After death, his soul immediately recognized that it had lived a life of conformity rather than authenticity. The feeling was not guilt, but longing. He described telling his guides, "I didn't live from the heart. I want to go back and feel what that's like." According to Cannon, this was a common theme, souls yearning for emotional richness, for meaningful connection, and for lives aligned with their core intention. The emotional tones in these sessions varied. Some were joyful, others somber, but all were imbued with a sense of clarity. The question, "Did I do what I came to do?" was not asked in fear, but in honesty. Cannon believed this question arises because the soul remembers its greater purpose once freed from the distractions and constraints of the physical world. In the afterlife, priorities shift. It is not about success or failure as measured by human standards. It is about alignment, integrity, and the evolution of the soul. Ultimately, Cannon's work invites a new understanding of the dying process, not as an end, but as a return to truth. Her recordings suggest that death reveals not what we feared, but what the soul truly came to understand. The soul's first question is not about death at all, it is about life. And that, perhaps, is the greatest insight of all. In the sessions conducted by Dolores Cannon, a consistent picture emerged of what happens after the soul crosses over. According to her findings, the soul does not drift aimlessly or await judgment. Instead, it enters a process of profound reflection and preparation, an organized, intelligent transition into the next phase of its evolution. One of the first stages is what many refer to as the life review. In this experience, the soul revisits key moments of the life just lived, not to be punished or rewarded, but to understand. It sees not only its own actions, but also the emotional impact those actions had on others. This, Cannon emphasized, is one of the most powerful teaching tools for the soul. What's striking is that this review is not imposed by an external authority. There is no judge in the traditional sense. The soul becomes its own evaluator, recognizing both its growth and its missed opportunities. It doesn't dwell in shame or guilt, but rather in a sincere desire to learn and improve. Cannon documented numerous cases where souls, upon seeing their life in full perspective, felt a strong pull to try again, not out of punishment, but out of love and commitment to their own journey. After this phase, many souls reportedly meet with spiritual guides, entities described as deeply wise, compassionate, and familiar. These guides, Cannon's subject said, assist in reviewing the lessons from the previous life and in planning the next one. This planning is not random. It is deeply purposeful. Souls, according to these accounts, actively choose circumstances that will offer them specific experiences needed for growth. These can include challenges, relationships, or environments that will help the soul develop qualities like compassion, resilience, forgiveness, or courage. Some of the most compelling cases involved souls choosing difficult or painful experiences in their next incarnation, not as punishment, but because those experiences would push them to evolve. For instance, a soul might choose to be born into a family with emotional distance in order to learn about self-worth, or it might opt for a life of illness to teach others empathy. Cannon often stressed that, from the soul's perspective, pain and joy are both valid teachers. Earth is seen as a school, and every life is a classroom. The soul also considers karmic patterns, not as debts to be repaid, but as imbalances to be healed. If a soul caused harm in one life, it may choose a new life where it experiences the other side of that dynamic. But again, this is not about judgment, it is about understanding. Cannon repeatedly noted that the driving force behind reincarnation is growth, not punishment. This process, she found, is accompanied by a deep awareness. Souls know why they're coming back. They know what they hope to learn. And yet, when they reincarnate, that awareness is temporarily hidden, veiled, so that the learning can happen through genuine choice and experience. This question reemerges after death, as the soul reconnects with its original intentions and remembers the purpose behind its incarnation. It remembers the plan, the agreements, the lessons it intended to explore. And when life ends, the soul naturally measures itself against that inner compass. Cannon sessions revealed that this understanding of reincarnation and soul evolution was not based on faith or doctrine, but on the repeated testimonies of people under deep hypnosis, people from different cultures, backgrounds, and belief systems, who had never read her books or heard of each other. And yet their stories aligned. In this view, the soul is not a passive traveler through life and death. It is an active participant in its own evolution. Every experience, whether joyful, tragic, or mundane, becomes part of a greater tapestry of meaning. The soul grows, not through perfection, but through effort, reflection, and love. And it returns again and again, not because it must, but because it chooses to. Over the years, the work of Dolores Cannon has quietly reshaped the way thousands, and eventually millions, of people view death. What began as isolated sessions of regression hypnotherapy with individuals seeking healing or clarity evolved into a vast body of work, grounded in recurring patterns and consistent testimonies. Across countless sessions, clients under deep hypnosis described remarkably similar experiences of death, the afterlife, and the process of reincarnation, regardless of their personal beliefs, education, or cultural background. What makes Cannon's findings so compelling is the consistency. These were not accounts delivered by people seeking attention or pushing a spiritual agenda. Many had never even heard of life between lives or soul planning. Yet their stories matched. The feeling of peaceful detachment after death, the presence of guides, the life review, and most of all, the internal realization of a soul's mission. When taken individually, such stories might seem like imagination. But when they repeat across hundreds of sessions, patterns begin to emerge that are difficult to dismiss. Cannon's material has gained the attention not only of spiritual seekers, but also of professionals in the fields of psychology, hospice care, and grief counseling. Some therapists who work with the dying have noted the parallels between her documented regressions and the first-hand accounts of patients in end-of-life settings. Descriptions of deceased loved ones appearing at the bedside, feelings of transition back home, and the absence of fear in those final moments are all themes that echo both in Cannon's recordings and in the literature on near-death experiences, NDEs. Indeed, many of the descriptions shared under hypnosis align closely with the reports of those who have been clinically dead and revived. Both NDEs and Cannon sessions often include accounts of a tunnel or passage, brilliant light, unconditional love, and a profound sense of being seen and accepted. More importantly, both types of experience highlight a transformative effect on the individual, a lessening of fear, a deeper sense of purpose, and often a reevaluation of how life should be lived. For readers and listeners of Cannon's work, one of the most frequently mentioned outcomes is the disappearance of fear surrounding death. Rather than dreading it as an end, many come to see death as a return, a continuation of something far greater than the earthly experience. This shift in perception doesn't require religious belief or spiritual commitment. In fact, Cannon repeatedly emphasized that her work was not tied to any religion. She simply recorded what people said, while in a state that bypassed the conscious mind, and presented those accounts for others to interpret as they saw fit. The emotional impact of this work has been profound. Families grieving a loved one have often found comfort in the idea that death is not the end, but a transition. Individuals facing terminal illness have reported peace after encountering Cannon's books or lectures, and many who previously viewed life as chaotic or meaningless have found a renewed sense of direction, convinced or at least open to the idea that their existence is part of a larger journey. It's important to recognize that these findings don't claim to prove anything in the scientific sense. They don't demand belief, nor do they offer dogma. They exist as documented recollections, consistent, detailed, and emotionally resonant. Whether they reflect absolute truth or a subconscious metaphor is ultimately a question each person must answer for themselves. But the sheer volume of accounts and the clarity with which they align has led many to question whether such consistency can be purely coincidental. Dolores Cannon's contribution lies not in persuading people of an afterlife, but in offering a vast archive of testimonies that point toward something beyond our current understanding. Her sessions give voice to the quiet knowing that so many have felt, that life has meaning, that death is not the end, and that each of us is here for a reason, whether we remember it yet or not. As always on this channel, we leave the final judgment to you. Belief is never imposed, but we invite you to consider the weight of the stories, the calm certainty with which they were shared, and the possibility that death is not something to fear, but something to understand. Dear friends, if you liked the video, please like it, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. See you soon.